the lane. 15-10. Touchdown, Chargers.
What's up, guys? Welcome in to a draft day edition of Chargers Weekly. We're taping this a day later than we normally do because we didn't want to date ourselves. Muddy, we had a lot to get into. Quentin Johnston is a Charger.
Yeah.
I first want to start by complimenting you and Adrian for hosting a heck of a party at Westfield.
It's a lot of fun. Really, it was easy for me just because we had great energy. Charger fans are incredible. The West Side is not easy to navigate. We know that. It's a giant mall. They were able to find us. The Chargers did a great job of setting up a really cool, felt like a backyard in the middle of the Westfield Mall. You know, bars all over the place, great food, and good entertainment. So it was easy. The energy was there. The fact that all these guys came out. Justin Herbert, Derwin James, Eric Kendricks, Antonio Gates, to have LaDainian Tomlinson on stage.
How about that?
When they made their selection was just, you can't script that. The greatest player in the history of TCU and someone that's in the conversation as the greatest Charger ever is on stage when they opt to pick a kid out of TCU. It was really cool to be part of it, and it was a lot of fun. And so kudos to everyone that put it together, but especially because I had a blast talking with the fans and all the people that came out. I really, really enjoyed it. I threw out my arm because of all those stupid mini footballs that weigh about 6 ounces apiece, trying to get some velocity behind it. My arm is dead today.
Dude, you literally had more passing attempts than Justin Herbert had all season. Every time I looked up at the stage, Money was throwing an out route, a post, a go.
And I'll tell you, the elixir, the lubricant of conversation. I had a single beer, and then I think everybody just felt like, oh, all right, well, there's no rules now. And next thing you know, I got people asking for passes from 2 decks up, people way in the back, and of course, being an idiot, I'm like, I'll get it there. And next thing you know, I'm just trying to figure out, all right, how do I get this thing to sail? And managed to get a couple up to the 3rd deck, so I was pretty proud of myself. But guess what? I'm paying for it today. Absolutely paying for it today.
You're right, though, man. Hey, the fans make it. It's always a pleasure catching up with you guys. A lot of listeners of the podcast, and we appreciate it so very much. So much to get into, man. I mean, the draft was wild from the beginning. A lot of unexpected picks. We'll get into the draft overall, but at 21 overall, everything was lining up with what we wanted for the Chargers, right? The best tight end was available. Jackson Smith-Njigba was a guy that I didn't think
I never thought he was a possibility.
Chargers. So at 21 overall, you had really your choice of wide receiver and tight end, and they decide that Quentin Johnston from TCU is the guy. Your reaction to that pick, we mentioned him on the podcast. I don't think we mentioned him as much as a guy like Zay Flowers or Jordan Addison or Kincaid or Mayer, but he's the guy.
Yeah, I'll be honest, I was surprised. I was. But then when you start to unpack it and think about it, teams have types. There are teams that, this is what they like. And we talked about this last year with the Chiefs when they moved on from Tyreek Hill and people were saying it's going to change the offense completely. And I remember getting into this with you. We talked about, I think they looked at the Chargers and they were like, hey, Keenan Allen's 6'3", Mike Williams almost 6'4". We need bigger guys. That's where this league is headed and you look at what they have in Cincinnati and what they've built, with that trio of receivers. They're all 6'2" or taller. And so sort of after my initial surprise, and we'll dig into it, I have no problem. We've been talking about this for 3 months now, and everybody knows what my order was and that I never mentioned Quentin Johnston. But I think that's sort of what ultimately this came down to is the Chargers, Tom Telesco, Brandon Staley, they like big guys. That's what they want. And so they're not interested in 5'10", Zay Flowers. They're not interested in 170-pound Jordan Addison. They wanted the big body. And I think, just to dig into it now, I don't think Quentin Johnston has the same level of skills that Zay Flowers does. But Zay Flowers is not 6'3", and capable of running, a sub 4.5 40. So you're going to make trade-offs. There are so few perfect receivers out there. So it's kind of a what do we want, what do we like, what do we think is the most effective with our quarterback, with the scheme that we're going to be calling, and clearly they wanted the big body because that's the only that's just kind of the way I break it down. I mean, it's funny, we were on stage and I said LaDainian Tomlinson's up there and Dalton Kincaid is available and Michael Mayer's available and Zay Flowers is available and Jordan Addison's available. I'm like, holy crap, I cannot believe the draft broke this way. And LT's like, it's Zay Flowers. He's like, it's Zay Flowers. They're going to take Zay Flowers, and he's saying that on stage. And it was funny just to see how excited he got when they took Quentin, because I think nobody had projected Quentin to be, well, I shouldn't say nobody. A lot of people liked him more than, I know Chris Sims liked him a lot. He was not a big Jordan Addison guy. Zay Flowers was his favorite receiver, but I think Quentin was his number 2. So I don't think it was, like it wasn't a crazy pick at all. It wasn't out of left field. Like I said, I think it's just one of those, this is the type of receiver that the Chargers prefer. Yeah. And they'll coach up. They think they can coach up some of the issues, some of the things that people had issues with. And I guess the one you can't coach 5'10" to be 6'3". that doesn't work. You can't coach Jordan Addison from 170 pounds to 210 pounds. That doesn't work either. So I guess that's the way they look at it. We'd rather have the body type, and let's see if we can fix the drops. Let's see if we can fix a lot of those body catches and turn him into a more complete receiver. The guy's big play. I mean, he had some explosive plays, big plays downfield, but I think those were just kind of the concerns that you assume they feel really good about being able to get right and end up with this giant receiver that's super fast. That's going to be a nightmare to cover.
Yeah, I think they drafted his traits too, right? 6'3", 208. They talked about his suddenness. His yards after the catch came up a lot. And I was going back to DJ's top 50. I think it was his last top 50. He compared Quentin Johnston to Mike Williams. So
right.
They're building a basketball team, right? They're building a basketball team with Everett and with Mike and Keenan and Palmer. So I look at the pick and I go back to what you said last week, and I think you summed it up perfectly. I think they even used it for the promo. Justin Herbert makes good wide receivers great, and he makes great wide receivers all pros.
Right.
I go back to 2020, his rookie year, when T. Billy was catching everything. Jalen Guyton was becoming a household name because of Justin Herbert. So if this guy can get open, and if Keenan or Mike is doubled and Quentin Johnston can get open and they can kind of use him in situations that maximize his potential, I think they got a really good pick. And I'd be remiss if I didn't mention Kellen Moore. Kellen Moore probably had a big say in the wide receiver that he preferred and he wanted for his offense. So Quentin Johnston seems to fit the bill. We were talking about Big 12 receivers before we came on. CeeDee Lamb is a Big 12 receiver that had some success at the Dallas Cowboys with Kellen Moore. So it's interesting because these mock draft exercises, and we're consumed by this draft evaluation process. And I think sometimes, we lock in on guys that we like and other people like, and you don't know. Like we mentioned Zion Johnson last year, Money, a little bit, but I don't think we actually said, okay, wow, this could be a reality. We were talking about Jameson Williams and some of these other guys. So it's exciting to kind of see it come to life. I was very surprised that a guy like Dalton Kincaid
blew
went
my mind.
To the Buffalo Bills.
It blew my and you saw
it was
them
the only
trade
tight
up
end
to get him.
drafted that first round.
They were like, we're not waiting. Go get him. And, man, they got to play. The Chargers have to play them in the regular season. If they want to get to the Super Bowl, very well may have to play him in the playoffs. You know how I feel about that guy. And I know tight end is not a premium position like wide receiver is.
Money, real quick. This is my thought on that position. There's so many good guys that are going to go today,
100%.
Right? Michael Mayer didn't get drafted in the first round. You talk about,
but I think Mayer, to me, and again, you know how I feel about Kincaid. To me, Kincaid is on an island. I felt like there was, and I know there's people that are like, oh no, I like Mayer more than Kincaid, and that's fine. For me, Kincaid he's a unicorn. He's Travis Kelce. And again, I'm biased. I get it, but I cannot believe the league let him go to the Bills. Like it's and that's the thing. Like, you end up getting sort of emotionally. It's confirmation bias. And now you have to reset your confirmation bias, and it sounds terrible, but it's like, no, I want Kincaid to be terrible now. I want to be completely wrong about this because he's on the Bills. I want Zay Flowers to continue to be a run of terrible draft picks at the receiver position by the Ravens. These are all AFC. Like, the AFC is already stacked with quarterbacks. Only 6 teams make the playoffs. Like, I'm just going to let me quickly do a little exercise here. Only 6 teams make the playoffs. Let's count.
Does anybody want it in the NFC, by the way, besides the Eagles?
That's what I mean.
Does anybody want it?
Well, why even bother? Nolan's the fact that that somehow Nolan Smith lasted until 31 and the Eagles got Jalen Carter and Nolan Smith, just get rid of it. The Eagles might as well be minus 7,000 to win the NFC. I don't know how they freaking pull it off every year, but you know what? It's what happens.
And they got a tampering pick from Arizona.
Exactly. So here's my thing. Let's count them: Josh Allen, Aaron Rodgers, Lamar Jackson, Joe Burrow, Deshaun Watson, Trevor Lawrence, Russell Wilson, Patrick Mahomes, Justin Herbert. Jeez. That is 9 quarterbacks. 3 of them are not going to make the playoffs. 9 quarterbacks. 3 aren't going to make the playoffs. And now you're talking about Zay Flowers going to the Ravens. You're talking about Dalton Kincaid going to the Bills. And those are 2 of our – thank goodness Bijan ended up going to the Falcons. I was worried that – I had this weird little – and I think the fact that Tyree Wilson slid a little bit because of that Liz Frank injury to the Raiders, that could be a nightmare. Him and Max Crosby, because we know Chandler Jones had some issues last year. But I was starting to think about it. I was like, man, I could totally see them taking Bijan. It's the Patriots way. It's you zig, we zag. It's let's just figure it out and bring him in. And
we wasted a lot of time on Bijan. He wasn't going to be there at 21.
Ultimately, again. It almost always goes back to, and I hate saying it because it's such a weird word, but it just goes back to the tape. Like when you watch Bijan Robinson play football, it's like I don't care. I have 0 issue with what the position is and the financial implication. It's like, well, you can't take a guy that high because now he's one of the highest paid running backs. And I don't care. Arthur Smith's going to he's going to touch the ball 25 times a game. Yeah.
Arthur Smith had Derrick Henry in Tennessee. He knows what
AFC Championship games. Yeah.
Yeah. How about Jahmyr Gibbs going to the Lions at 12?
That was a surprise. And they signed David Montgomery. They have DeAndre Swift. I
saw somebody tweet this, and they're right. When you think about how it played out for the Lions and the Eagles, the Lions could have had the same exact haul that the Eagles got with Carter and Nolan Smith.
How about that?
If they just
that's a great call.
And they got an inside linebacker and a running back, and they have a stud running back. I know they lost Jamal Williams, but it's just eye of the beholder, man. Like we don't know. All 32 teams are different. They have a different evaluation. They have a different philosophy, and that's how the draft plays out. Like seeing Gibbs at 12, I was like, okay, man, this is officially off the rails, and it was good for the Chargers in that the wide receivers and the tight ends kept slipping.
100%. 100%.
It goes to me money that they wanted Johnson was their number 1 receiver.
Clearly.
It's very
clearly.
Clear.
And that's fine. Like I said, it's totally fine. They know more about this than I do. They dig into it a lot deeper. Teams have so much more information than we do. There's just so much more available to them than we get. For me, I like to watch guys play games. I've been covering the draft for a long time, and so I have some of these, and it's probably not healthy. I have some of these built-in biases about certain schools or certain conferences and how often we see certain position groups perform at a high level in the NFL. And, I'm up front with that. I cop to that, and that's part of the bias that I have. I like getting guys from the SEC. I think when you go through, if you're just to go through the stats and if I'll pull it up right now, like let's just go through the receiving stats. So these are just biases that you have to get them away from you, right? Like you've got to be able to separate. Like, hey, this guy could be the greatest receiver in the history of football, but you've counted him out because he's in the Big 12, and you don't think the Big 12 produces elite receivers. Like when I go through it, here's SEC, Tyreek Hill, technically SEC before he got kicked out of school and slipped to the fourth round because he was a terrible person. Fresno State, SEC, Stephon Diggs. I think Maryland was ACC at the time. I don't think they were Big Ten yet. There's CeeDee Lamb, so there's your Big 12. Jalen Waddle, SEC. Travis Kelce at 8. And, that's the whole outlier thing with Dalton Kincaid. Devontae Smith, SEC. Terry McLaurin, Big 10. Amon Ra, Pac-12. Amari Cooper, SEC. Mike Evans, SEC. Christian Kirk, don't count that, although SEC, A&M, right? Yeah. Garrett Wilson, Ohio State. DK Metcalf, Ole Miss. Jamar Chase, LSU. Chris Olave, OSU. You see where receivers are made, So that's, again, it's just a bias. It's a pernicious seed that's planted in my brain that I've got to be able to ignore. Because, again, I think the best comparison, and we talked about it last night, Chris, is look at what the Bengals have and look at what a complete nightmare they are to cover at wide receiver with Tyler Boyd, T. Higgins, and Jamar Chase. It's a nightmare because you can't have a small corner. You can't. These guys are too big, and that's what the Chargers are going to throw out there. And to me, that's very exciting. And remember, this is a guy that's going to have a ton of one-on-one opportunities, man. You got a 6'3", high 4'4" wide receiver that's going to get a ton of one-on-ones, and he's got Justin Herbert and that freaking cannon throwing the ball down the field because you can't afford to single cover Mike Williams or Keenan Allen. On a third down, this guy's going to get freaking single coverage. He's going to have the chance to make some really big plays, and that part of it is exciting. You want a guy with some size when you're pushing that ball downfield, and this guy's going to be a heck of a weapon on that front.
Well, let's not forget Gerald Everett. I mean, Gerald Everett had his best game as a Charger in that playoff game against the Jacksonville Jaguars. So that's another weapon.
Sure did.
He considers himself an athlete, not a tight end. So it's just another big body weapon for Justin. And I want to get your thoughts on what the Chargers may do in this second round. And what I was getting at is, okay, the tight end position is loaded. There's 4 guys that could one of them just fall in their lap if they didn't even move up in the second round. I mean, Laporta is that guy from Iowa that DJ really, really likes. Washington from Georgia, Musgrove from Oregon State, Mayer from Notre Dame. If you get one of those 4 guys, I mean, I think you're going a long way in terms of solidifying that position, not only for 2023, but the years to come with Justin.
Yeah, I'm looking at it. You think about who's in front of them, right? So the Lions traded Hawkinson. They need a tight end. Cardinals could use a tight end. Steelers have Freiermuth. Colts could certainly – they're going to want weapons for Anthony Richardson. You have the Rams. Don't know what they're going to do. I would imagine they probably want to trade back. Seahawks are up. There's a lot of teams that could use tight ends, especially you think about those teams that picked high that have young quarterbacks. The Panthers for Bryce Young. The Packers for Jordan Love after taking Lucas Van Ness in the first round instead of a wide receiver to help out Jordan Love. But they did take their 2 receivers last year. I mean, they got Doubs and Watson last year, so they're fine. But that's a tight end spot. The thing with Laporta that's interesting is the Iowa offense was so anemic last year that it's easy for someone like that to get overlooked, with that kind of skill set from a tight end factory like Iowa, who produces really good tight ends. So if Laporta can make it to him at 54, that'd be incredible. I think it's going to be tough. I think when you look
put up better numbers than Kittle did at Iowa without a quarterback, right?
Yeah, and that's what I mean. That the offense was just completely and totally anemic. So you're talking about a group of players. I'm trying to find them here. Where are my tight ends? Here we go. So you're talking about Mayer, who's going to go right away. Musgrove. So you really have 5 left. You know what? I actually even like Brenton Strange out of Penn State. I forgot about him. And that's the thing. Shoemaker, he's solid out of Michigan. But I think what we're talking about is elite tight end play. Dalton Kincaid is going to be an elite tight end. I know he's not a do-it-all. He's not a huge blocker, but he's a capable blocker. But, man, Michael Mayer's going to go right away. Musgrave, I think, is probably going to go pretty quick. He's super athletic and just had injury issues. That's why his production was so low. We know Darnell Washington, my gosh.
Musgrave only played in a couple of games this year,
barely
right?
played, yeah. But when he did, he flashes. He's really athletic. You see contorting his body, picking balls off guys' heads, like really doing some impressive stuff in the limited sample that you get. Washington, to me, that's just one where that's like, I don't know how that guy makes it. You can't find a guy that freaking big, at 6'7", 260. He's an offensive lineman. Like you get a sixth offensive lineman in your tight end, and oh, by the way, that offensive lineman is pretty athletic and can catch balls and watch bodies just bounce off him down the field. So, I think the thing with picking a tight end at 21, there's a reason why tight ends don't go a lot in the first round, and it's a reason why running backs don't go a lot in the first round, and it's the money. It's the fact that these guys aren't making $25 million a year like a one receiver is. So when you can get that first round contract, you want to try to get that financial flexibility, especially when you're about to play Justin Herbert, what you're about to pay him. So I think that's probably part of the reason why the Chargers went wide receiver over tight end there. And you said it, Chris, the deep class. The fact that they feel like, oh, no, we can get one of these guys at 54 if they really want to keep building on offense, which selfishly I want them to do, but I wouldn't be surprised. Corner group is pretty deep. I thought maybe they were going to take Deontay Banks there, the pick that when I think the Giants took him, 24. Yeah, so like that would have been a great. I was like, ooh, if Brandon gets on that table and starts jumping, I could totally see him wanting that long corner. We talked about the contract situation, right? But you know what that signals to me is that things are going really well with JC, and they feel like he's going to be ready, and that's going to put them back at a little bit of depth at that position.
The wide receiver run started too, and it started at 20, and then I think it was like 4 straight wide receivers. It'll be interesting to see when the tight end run in the second round starts, and if it starts closer to where the Chargers select, or if they really wanted one of those guys, if they'd have to move up to get them. Still, there's a lot of positions in need. Let's take a quick break and talk about some other potential positions they may target. All right, guys, as the official hospitality provider for the NFL, On Location offers unrivaled access to experience all premier NFL events like never before. On Location brings you up close for all the action, providing fans with unforgettable moments from Draft Day to Super Bowl Sunday and everything in between. On Location, thrilled to announce its new partnership with the Pro Football Hall of Fame. This August, kick off football season in Canton, Ohio, and be there live to witness the class of 2023 enshrinement. The NFL also headed back to London and Germany for the 2023 NFL International Games. On Location official packages will feature game tickets, deluxe hotel accommodations, private tours, pregame hospitality, end-to-end planning, and much more. Be sure to secure your priority access today. Visit NFLOnLocation.com or search NFL On Location today. Your football experience of a lifetime awaits, only with On Location. So, Money, we've talked a lot about the offense and wide receiver and tight end.
Let's keep talking offense, Chris.
We'll keep talking offense. Hey, I'm with you, though. Like, I even said it last night, and to your point, really, the last couple of months, you got to outscore Patrick Mahomes and all those other quarterbacks you mentioned, not to mention C.J. Stroud and Anthony Richardson are coming to the AFC. And I'm not saying they're going to blow up the league in the first year or two, but you never know.
They're both good. I think they're both good quarterbacks.
Man, just the AFC is crazy. You have to score 40 points. You have to score 40 points.
And all the word is that Tennessee is going to get Will Levis. That's the team. So you're talking about another quarterback that's coming in. Now,
it's crazy.
Do all of them make it? No, they never do. It's just the way it works. You don't have a quarterback class where every single one of the guys makes it. So one or two of them are going to be, on another team after 4 years, and that's just the reality of it. That's how it works out. But those are high picks. C.J. Stroud, Anthony Richardson invested in the AFC South, which is good for us because you don't want one team to dominate. You want them all to beat up on each other and pull each other out of that wild card. So you don't have. So I think that's, to me that's something that's down the road. That was the only thing I was thinking about with Houston. Like that's what we went through all the quarterbacks, right? Like, how do you decide to start the clock? Like, you know what? Am I really going to – I really need to love C.J. Stroud because I feel like we're a couple years away. So now I'm starting that 5-year clock. Technically, it's a 4-year clock, right? If he's going to be good. And do I want to start this 4-year clock with Josh Allen, Justin Herbert, Joe Burrow, Patrick Mahomes? Did I mention Burrow in that list, by the way?
I think you did.
Okay. I was going to say, am I at 10 now? But you know what I mean?
Listen,
so, like, that's the interesting part.
By the way, too, Money, like, you didn't mention Kenny Pickett, and I know that he was a rookie last year, but Mike Tomlin doesn't have losing seasons, man. Like, the Steelers are going to be good. Kenny Pickett is going to be able to lead them to wins.
The point I was simply, like,
ridiculous.
illustrating. Yeah, the only thing I was illustrating is, you won't, like, if Kenny Pickett misses the playoffs, you're like, oh, yeah, whatever. But, like, when you say, hey, Trevor Lawrence missed the playoffs, Justin Herbert missed the playoffs, Joe Burrow missed the playoffs, Deshaun Watson with his fancy guaranteed contract missed the playoffs, Lamar Jackson and all that tumult in Baltimore and what they went through before finally getting a deal missed the playoffs. Like, that's what's crazy about this conference.
The balance of power is insane. And I'll say it again, man. I have, shame on the teams in the NFC that didn't make an offer for Lamar Jackson.
Yeah.
Shame on him. And Aaron Rodgers, too. I don't know if Green Bay was going to trade him in the NFC, but I would have given up more to get Aaron Rodgers and keep him in the NFC and compete for a Super Bowl alongside Jalen. You have Jalen Hurts.
That's it.
Dak Prescott. And
Dak.
There's an argument that your guy Derek Carr is like the third best quarterback in the conference.
That does not bode well for the NFC in terms of talent at the quarterback position.
I digress.
You look at the Cardinals roster's a mess. The Rams are on a complete rebuild. The 49ers are going to be dominant defensively, and with what they have, Christian McCaffrey, that weapon, George Kittle, McCaffrey, they just do it with weapons. So just, I think that's the one thing about the NFC when everyone's like, oh, it's the Eagles. Yeah, it is. But let's not forget about what the weapons look like in San Francisco. That defense is it's atrocious. It's so freaking dominant. And when you combine their offensive line with McCaffrey, Debo, Ayuk, Kittle, and the brain of Kyle Shanahan, okay, now they can trade punches with the Eagles. They can. Do I think they're better? No. Especially not after last year's draft and this draft. But, the South is, you got Baker at quarterback for the Bucs. You got Bryce Young, the number 1 pick for the Panthers. Desmond Ritter's, doing it with the Falcons. But look, they were able to get a reclamation project, and Ryan Tannehill and Arthur Smith made it work with Derrick Henry, and now he's going to be able to make it work with Cordero Patterson, Tyler Algier, and Bijan Robinson. And it's very reminiscent of what he did in Tennessee, and, as someone that called a lot of college football, what Jim Harbaugh did at Stanford when he's like, all right, Pac-12, you want to play a ton of nickel and dime and you want to throw it all over? I guess what we're going to do, we're going to come down, we're going to kick your ass. We're going to play power football, and you don't have the bodies. And that's what he's building in Atlanta. You got those big receivers. You got that gigantic freak of a tight end. And now you've got this 3-headed monster at running back that can be flexed all over the field. We know Cordero was drafted as a wide receiver. Algier's a hammer. Bijan can move to the slot. I can't wait to see what they're going to do in Atlanta. I got a ton of respect for Arthur Smith and the way he sees football. So that's, I guess what I'm getting at, Chris, is I think it's a little bit of an overreaction. I think I do think there's some teams that are interesting. The Panthers have a really good defense. I believe in Frank Reich, and I believe in Bryce Young, 100%. Yeah. So I think it looks to be the Eagles maybe for a year before the other teams might be able to catch up there with all that depth and who they got. But at the same time, weird things happen.
I know.
Weird things happen every year.
The Caleb Williams Drake May sweepstakes is gonna heat up.
Yeah, and Bo Nick's gonna get in there too. Bo Nick's gonna be a top 5 pick. It's gonna be, and you know what? Someone else will raise their hand. You'll get the Anthony Richardson, you'll get the Will Levis, you'll get the Joe Burrow single season. It happens. Somebody always ends up raising their hand. But I'm sorry. I love the draft. I'm a draft dork.
It's the best, man. It's fun just to react. It's fun to react to all the craziness that happened yesterday. Staying with the Chargers, one position I'm a little concerned about depth-wise is edge. And I bring that up because obviously you got Khalil Mack and Joey Bosa. Like, what are you talking about? It's the guys behind them. Chris Rumph is still developing. They're going to need a couple of guys to develop.
I'm hopeful Van Noy, after the draft, comes back. I think he wants to be here. I'm hoping that works out. Like
is Leonard Floyd still available?
Still out there. He's still out there. He's going to get signed after the draft. And that's where you tend to get bargains, right? Because teams don't have a lot of cap space left. Yeah. They figured out, okay, this is what I need for my draft pool. I've got that squared away. Now how much do I have, Leonard? I got $7.5 million. It's yours if you want to take it. You can get back in the market next year. That would be great. I think defensive tackle is I'm just kind of, for those watching on YouTube, sorry, I'm not looking at the screen. I'm kind of looking off on my other computer here. Keanu Benton, I don't know if he'll make it. He's an exceptional player out of Wisconsin. A lot of people kind of call him a poor man's Jalen Carter, which we'll take. Siaki Ika, that's someone that people talked about. Byron Young out of Alabama. So that's interior. Edge, Byron Young, Tennessee. A lot of people like him. We talked about Tui Pelotu out of SC.
Fun.
He very well could end up being there. So that's the front. And then I think you go to the back end of the defense. We talked about what a deep corner group this is. You still got Brian Branch, Joey Porter, Kelly Ringo, DJ Turner, Cam Smith. There's some really good corners on the board.
You think Joey Porter's going to go to the Steelers for first pick?
Yes, or that to me that's just that to me looks like Will Lev. I'm surprised, and I think they were probably trying to get back into the first round to get him so they could get that 50-year option. But if a team likes Will Levis, they're going to immediately make sure they get him. So, but it certainly would make sense. We know Mike Tomlin coaches up DBs like Bill Belichick and Pete Carroll coach up DBs, right? It's what they do. It's what they love. So it would be hard to imagine Joey Porter Jr. not going there after what Joey Porter meant to that team. But, and then you go to safety, Chris, and we mentioned Brian Branch and how versatile he is. He'll be gone, but the two safeties out of Illinois, Brown and Martin, people love them. One of them could be available. There's some this is a deep draft. There's some really good players if they're going to go defense on day 2 and try to build some depth because of all the injuries, right? Johnson, Abonia. They got a lot of J.C. Jackson. They got so many injuries. You saw what happened when Mikey Davis left the game against Jacksonville. Everything changed immediately. So
everything.
I think it wouldn't surprise me because of how deep the defensive back group is, and they need a returner, by the way. So that was the other thing about the whole Quentin Johnston, pick. It's Zay can return, Addison can return. Now, I know you don't want to put your starting receiver out there, but that was the other thing that I was thinking, and why I was thinking those two guys is they need a returner, and hey, these guys can return kicks and punts. I don't think Johnston's ever done it.
It's hard to get all those guys on the field at the same time too, right? Palmer's going into his third year. In a perfect world, Keenan and Mike aren't coming off the field.
Right.
So to have that positional versatility with a returner, hopefully they can find one later. As far as defense is concerned, I do think you look at the guys that they drafted last year as almost like redshirt guys, right? Tito Abonia, JT Woods.
Woods is the big one. He's got to make a jump.
He's got to make a leap.
That's a big one because that's a third-round pick. You need your 2s and your 3s to be out there playing football. But again, that's a hard – free safety is a hard position, and Brandon Staley's defense is complex. It is not Gus Bradley – see it, attack it. It is much more complex. He asks a lot of his defensive backs, and that's sort of what we talked about. Remember with J.C. Jackson early, that he just came from a system where Bill Belichick said, "That's your guy. That's all you have to worry about. You're good," and he had to try to settle in to what Brandon, in that 2-high shell and a lot of quarters, and hey, you've got to read. You need the one because he's coming outside, or you're taking, all of that sort of stuff.
Well, think about the leap that Michael Davis made from
100%.
year 1 to year 2. He was in the same boat where it took him a little while to grasp that system. So you're right. You need that.
Need a year.
That player can come in and it may not happen first year. One thing that's very interesting to me now is this whole Austin Eckler situation because we talked about Bijan in here and Jahmyr Gibbs was like that second guy, almost like the 1A. I saw that there were some teams that thought that. They thought higher of Gibbs than Bijan. I don't know how true
nuts.
that is.
It's crazy.
But here we are. Is it even worth the Chargers drafting a running back when we don't know what Isaiah Spiller is, right? Like that. This is where it's like, okay, is Austin just going to come back here and we're going to try to make this thing work with Joshua Kelly and Isaiah Spiller and Eckler? Or is there another guy in this draft? Charbonnet from UCLA, another Bruin, is probably maybe that next running back. I guess it's in the eye of the beholder. But the whole Austin Eckler thing, money, I was thinking about that a lot last night because I thought that if the Chargers made a move at running back in the first round, maybe that signaled something. But, the hope is Austin comes back at this point, but who knows? Well,
I think it's much like wide receivers. Running backs are all different. Jahmyr Gibbs has been compared to Kamara, someone that can really catch the football. You can flex him out all over the field. Again, look, maybe I'm wrong. I know there were people that really, really like him, but when I watch Bijan Robinson play, it's like, holy heck, that guy is just next level. But I think, we talked about Roschon Johnson with Brett a couple weeks ago, because he's just a big back. I mean, you're talking about 220, 215. I think he might even be 219 pounds. He's a big dude. So that's different, right? But that's something that we saw from Josh Kelly last year where it felt like Josh took that step. And that was something he told us, remember, at training camp when he sat down with us, before the season even started. He said, I needed to get bigger. I needed to get stronger. He's like, because I felt like they were bringing the attack to me, and I'm going to bring the attack to them. And we saw that last year. So I think they're probably comfortable with Josh in that role. Now, like we said, it's a different, it's a gaps, it's a wide zone, it's an outside zone, and you've got to read your gaps. You've got to have really good vision in this offense as a running back, because once you're handed that ball, you're just following these assignments. Is that lane open? No. Next one. Okay, now that's closed. I've got to cut back to this one to get through. It's a little bit different. And I think we saw Josh at his best when it was, here's the ball, attack. When we saw Josh struggle a little bit is when he's trying to stretch it outside and trying to get that corner and stuff, not necessarily, his particular skill set. So I think you got to figure out what is the room, what do we have, versus what's available. And to me, I'd be really surprised. I think Bijan, look, if Bijan was there at 21 and Quentin Johnston was there at 21 I don't think there's any question Bijan would have been the pick. I don't think there was any question. He was just an elite player. So I think now that he's gone, I don't think running back really comes into play. I think they have some depth concerns. Unless, and again, this is the whole, we don't know as much as they know, unless the relationship with Austin is completely soured and they're worried about that, which I don't think it is. But, I don't know.
I hope it isn't. I think, too, as fans watching this draft unfold, just keep in mind, when they draft a guy like Quentin Johnston, when they do these things that they're going to do in rounds 2 and 3 and beyond, Kellen Moore's fingerprints are going to be on this offense. And there's a reason why they're bringing in certain guys, because they fit what Kellen wants to do. And one of the things that Brandon Staley said when I talked to him right after they picked him was just challenging defenses in different ways. And Kellen Moore was so good at that at Dallas. So to have Quentin kind of complement what Keenan and Mike do best, knowing you have Gerald Everett, hopefully having Austin Eckler out of the backfield, Kellen has to believe that he has the pieces in place to really stress defenses. So that's why I would be encouraged if I'm a Chargers fan by this pick, because Kellen Moore probably had his fingerprints on it.
I think the one thing, just going back to it, is I'm trying to think. I think it was Coach Lynn when we first brought it up that first year that Brandon was Justin Herbert was playing, and he said, you can't just have speed. You've got to have speed that scares the defense. Yeah. If you're just a guy running down the field and they don't really care, it doesn't matter. But to me, Quentin Johnston scares a defense, because we've just seen the explosive plays that he put up at TCU. It's like, hey, that's a big dude. Justin Herbert's got a giant arm, and he throws the ball beyond accurately downfield. And if we don't account for this guy, we're hosed. It's a 50-yard completion or it's a 70-yard touchdown, so we have got to be worried about that guy. And I think that's what you're talking about, Chris, is they did not have that element last year, and teams just packed the box, and they were happy to cover up all those underneath routes from Keenan and Josh Palmer, and those quick outs. The running game had no chance to breathe. You bring in someone like Johnston with that size and that speed, and look, even if he does what he did at TCU, which was not a lot of complicated routes, run that way real fast. If we throw you the ball, catch it. If that's all he does, it's going to change how defenses have to behave and how they have to attack the Chargers offense, because he's running. He's gone. And he's got the speed and he's got the size to beat you. He's just got to catch the ball. And if he does, man, things are going to open up underneath for Josh Palmer and Keenan Allen and Austin Eckler out of the backfield and Isaiah Spiller if he starts to come on, and Justin Herbert to run the ball like Dak did quite a bit under Kellen Moore. Like that's the exciting thing about Johnston is his ability. They needed that. They needed a player that threatens the defenses deep, that you have to be worried about getting the top taken off.
I'm telling you, dude, I'll say it again. I thought about exactly what you said last week about Justin Herbert and how he makes good receivers great and great receivers all pros. And I think that Johnston is at least good and Justin will make him great. And if he's already great, he'll be an all-pro eventually down the line. So I'm excited about that aspect. And that's the reason, too. When you see a wide receiver like that drafted, that Justin Herbert, too, his arm, like we didn't see them throw the ball down the field at all last year, man. And it was frustrating. And I realized that there were injuries and there was a lot of stuff to it. But it's going to change this year. And that was the first sign that it's going to change.
Certainly. I think just kind of looking at today, and look, day 3, developmental depth picks, and man, I don't think there certainly was not last year. I don't know the last time we saw a day 3 pick like Jamari Sawyer and the contribution he made, but they hit an absolute home run with a day 3 pick there. We saw what Dean Leonard and Jasir Taylor were able to do on special teams that won them a game against Denver. So those guys had impact.
What's your order for today? Like, what do you want to see today?
I think now it really does become a best available. Look, the Chargers are stacked. They are now in debt. I think with your first round pick, you're taking that big swing. You got to hit it. You get the benefit of cost certainty, the 5th-year option. It's so important to hit on those picks. Outside of that, I think they just follow their board. I don't think they're going to force a tight end. They're not going to force a corner. They're not going to force a defensive end because they need an end? Yeah, they need an edge. They need a little bit of depth there. But like I said, I think post-draft, there's enough guys available that they might be able to make that work like they did last year with Van Noy. And I keep going back to that Leonard Floyd thing and saying, man, I got to believe that Staley is going to be pounding that table. And I think we'll get a signal that may be the case based on the way they draft. But to me, like that, I feel like today is a defense day, unless there's just incredible value. If somehow Washington, Laporta, Musgrave fall, then perhaps that's the pick. But I don't think it's a running back day. I could see maybe if for whatever reason, to me, I would draft in the first 3 rounds. I would draft an offensive lineman every single year. I just think it is so important. You've got to be able to protect Justin Herbert. He's the most important commodity that you have on your team, and I don't think there's anything wrong with, if for whatever reason, let's say Bergeron, he's not going to, but if Bergeron drops, if Cody Mauch, that a lot of people love out of North Dakota State, starts to drop, then take him. I got no problem. It's a premium position that makes a ton of cash. You're going to have to pay Rashawn Slater. They just paid Trey Pipkins. I got no problem with taking guys like that, and just kind of creating depth. So I think that's the great thing about the position the Chargers are in, is they do have enough depth now where they can simply follow the board.
Tom alluded to this, I think, last night. They drafted Rashawn Slater, Zion Johnson, and now Quentin Johnston. Those are all for Justin Herbert. All those guys are for Justin Herbert, to protect 100%. Him and to give him weapons. Hey, I think we're going to get DJ on next week to break down the draft, which is awesome. Dude, his mock draft, he freaking nailed it. Did you see?
He was on fire last night.
Oh my
he
God.
Was on just it. And look, I know for a fact how this works because I've worked the draft for the NFL Network for 10 years. You don't know. He does not have the general managers are not sharing. They're radio silent with you during the draft. They're in their war rooms. They're doing their thing. You know, they may reach out to you after they make their pick, but he does not know what's coming. And he was a fortune teller last night. He could predict the future. Remember when everybody was taking shots at C.J. Stroud and mocking Tyree Wilson to the Texans, he was like, "There's no way." He was the only one that just kept his head down and said, "There is no way they go into the season with Davis Mills as their quarterback." C.J. Stroud, whatever with the cognitive testing, maybe it's a red flag for some teams, but he's like, "I just don't see it." He was right on that. The fact they traded back up, he was all over that. Like the Will Levis slide, all over that. I mean, he just seemed to know what was coming. He did a heck of a job.
Yeah, he's the best. Well, hopefully we'll talk to him next week or the week after to break down the Chargers draft class. And Bunny, with that, we'll get out of here. Let fans enjoy the rest of the weekend. Happy draft weekend, my man. Great job last night, and we'll do it again next week.
Absolutely.
All right, guys, as the official hospitality provider for the NFL, On Location offers unrivaled access to experience all premier NFL events like never before. On Location brings you up close for all the action, providing fans with unforgettable moments from draft day to Super Bowl Sunday and everything in between. On Location, thrilled to announce its new partnership with the Pro Football Hall of Fame. This August, kick off football season in Canton, Ohio, and be there live to witness the class of 2023 enshrinement. The NFL also headed back to London and Germany for the 2023 NFL International Games. On Location official packages will feature game tickets, deluxe hotel accommodations, private tours, pregame hospitality, end-to-end planning, and much more. Be sure to secure your priority access today. Visit NFLOnLocation.com or search NFL On Location today. Your football experience of a lifetime awaits, only with On Location.